Hey, this is Crystal Cotton, and I am so excited you are here. I help people find their way through the murkiness of spirituality and grant themselves permission to think freely. And what I'm going to share in this video is just how to bridge the gap between spirituality and religion. This is the second time that I have launched a blog. The first time it was called Awakening Christian. And so I changed that name for multiple reasons. But one of the first questions out of the gate was, how do you balance spirituality and religion? And I know exactly where this question was coming from because I had lived through it. But it also reminded me that there is a need for education around what is spirituality, and how does religion and spirituality work together. So really, if you think about it, spirituality and religion are not different. Religion is a subset of spirituality. And if you think about it, how can you take all the wisdom and knowledge of an almighty, omnipotent God, universe source, and cram it into a single text? It seems ludicrous, actually, when you think about it. But this is what we've tried to do with religion, and it just doesn't work. So what we have to do is look at a broader view. So what is the view? From my perspective, religion is a subset of spirituality, not the other way around. Why do I say that? Because what I've discovered is, first of all, is that when you read the Bible and you look at other spiritual activities and tools and media, they don't conflict. They appear to conflict because of the perspective that's taken in your religious text, but they don't conflict, okay? So, but what is missing is a level of understanding. It's about dimensions of the content. When you look at your spiritual text, and I'm been Christian, so I will say the Bible, but when you look at your spiritual text, insert whatever yours is, it's attempting to take all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom of the all-knowing being that we call God, or and compress them into a book, 66 books to be exact, if you're looking at the Bible. That's ludicrous, right? But what it does provide, what your spiritual text does provide, is a safe haven, a safe environment in the context of being a spiritual being. So if you stay in the box that you have in your spiritual text, you will be safe. You won't tiptoe out into experiencing other spiritual matters, but you also won't have all the tools that you need to have the best life that you can have here. So you may say, okay, Crystal, what are you talking about? Well, it's been proven scientifically, which is the last. Science is usually dragging behind spirituality, right? So science is finally caught up and said, you know what? Everything is in the universe is made out of the same thing. The only difference is the frequency at which we're vibrating. Okay, let's take that. If that's true, then there's no difference between you and the device that you're watching me on right now, except for the vibration. And if God is all and is in all and is in you, that means that everything is all inside of God. So that means that the good, the bad, and the ugly are all inside God, and God is in all. So then you may say, well, Crystal, wait a minute, hold up. No. Because bad things don't come from God. God is all good, and the bad stuff come from that other one. Here's the reality. The reality is, and this is for a later video, the reality is there is no other one. The other one is in you. But we'll talk about that on another day. Right now we're talking about bridging the gap. So how do we bridge the gap? Well, the first thing we need to know is that God is exactly who he says, who we believe he is. What do I mean by that? I mean that he is omniscient, omnipotent, everywhere at once, and exists and knows all at once. Okay, so we know we have a common definition, or at least scope, of who God is. The problem, not a problem, but the difference comes into play in that when we look at God, we try to define God based on what we understand in our brain and in our mind. The challenge with that is that your mind can only it's very, very much like a computer. Your mind, just like a computer, can only process data that has been input. In other words, your mind doesn't have the capability to experience spiritual things and other things. It can only process and compare the data that has been input. So let's talk about the data that's been input. Other people's opinions, experiences, your interpretations of your experiences, generations before you experiences, all those things make up what your brain uses to interpret the information that's given. So that means that we try to make God into something that is external to us that we can process. So we give him kind of like the personality of a man. It's like, oh, the big guy in the sky, the man above. When the reality is that God is spirit and God is everything. So this is where one big divide comes between religion and spirituality, is that man has created this perception that interprets God to be man-like, and that's just not the case. But because we're in the confines of religion, which gives us kind of a set box to operate within, and we're told that we shouldn't go outside that box, it really places a limitation on you in terms of what tools you can use on your spiritual journey to understand more about God. It's kind of like you're safe, but you're also limited. I like to think of it like a journey. Say you got this really sharp race car. It's I don't know, it's a Maserati, it's, cherry red or whatever your favorite color is. And then you're all revving to go. You got a full tank of gas. You can see where you need to go. Your place is beautiful. It's immaculate. It has everything that you want in it. Everything that you want or could ask for, could ever dream of is right there. And you hop in the ride and you floor the gas because you're on your way, man. This is it. And then you hit a wall. Well, that wall that you hit is analogous to your religious text. Your religion, because your religion says, no, don't go out there, because out there are things that you should not be involved with, like astrology, like numerology. There's bad stuff out there. You don't do that meditation. You don't know what them voices are that come to you. And there's some truth to that, okay? There's some truth to that, because there are both high vibration things and there are low vibration things. And entities and activities, okay? So it is not an environment where, you should just be out there. It's nice to have a safe environment of the Bible, but at the same time, you can't get to the other side of the wall. You can't get to the other side of the wall. You're struggling. Your life is not what you want it to be. You have situations where you have ministers committing suicide, families breaking up, people feeling low self-worth, when in fact, you are a divine spiritual being with the ability to create the life the way you like it. You have that. God gave that to you. God, the universe, you have that ability. But when you operate in the confines of your religion, you can't get there. So, and so you may be saying, well, Crystal, how you know? Where are you coming from? Because I personally have been going through a spiritual awakening for the last 10 years. I didn't know I was going through a spiritual awakening before that. I would say actually 20 years. But I didn't know what was going on. I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that I would feel things in my sensations in my body. I'd be like, oh man, I must have MS. There must be something wrong with me. And my understanding of things were different than other people's understanding. The religious people or people that I respected with a religious background, basically, if you didn't agree with what the word said, you're wrong. You're just wrong. And I couldn't accept that because it just didn't make sense. Like, why would God, my father, if God is my Father, you know, and I'm supposed to seek him, and when I begin to seek him, I find things that are inconsistent and I'm urged to challenge them, that doesn't seem right, that I should not be challenging. It seems like I should pursue. And in fact, what I found is that a lot of the things in my spiritual text were not wrong per se, but they weren't complete. So you may be saying, well, Crystal, I hear what you're saying, but you know what? I don't even understand where you're coming from. Well, first thing that you need to know, and why this topic is important and why I'm out here, put myself out here to talk about it, is because there is a spiritual awakening that's taking place on the planet right now. But before then, there were some people who had spiritual awakenings in advance before now, and I was one. My spiritual awakening started 30 years ago, I would say, 25, 30 years ago. And then it was dampened for a time, for about 20 years. And then it was reawakened. And so I know exactly what it feels like to go through a spiritual awakening, to experience the synchronicities, to have the sensations in my body as energies change. It has happened to me, and that's how I know. God is exactly what we believe God to be. In the sense that the religious text that you have that says that God is everywhere, that God is in everything, that God knows all and is in all, is absolutely correct. That's true. The challenge that makes it look like spirituality and religion are different is that because the brain is much like a computer and really can only process based on data that's been input, and the only data you have is that of what a man is like, we project man-like qualities to God, when in fact that's not correct. So we'll say the man upstairs, or, my father. Like, we give God names and a persona of like a man, but like a big man, when that's not really true. God is more like an ocean. And there's, there's in an ocean, I like this example. I can't remember where I got it from, but where there's a calm part that's at the bottom of the ocean. And then there's a more rippled part maybe in the middle where there's some activity. And then there's waves and at the top that are going back and forth. Well, the waves back and forth is your unsettled, uncontrolled experience in life. The middle is the closer you get to God, the calmer the waters. I love that analogy. So the challenge is that within religion, there are many people who within religion are completely comfortable. They swear by the Bible and their experience, and they're happy as can be. But there are others who are not, who have not been able to experience the same thing, who do not get the same result, who begin to question their existence, who begin to think there's something wrong with them. I was one of those people. I thought that I was crazy. I thought there was something wrong with me. How come I don't know the church speak? How come I'm not, making the same sound, the same gestures as everybody else? I just, what's wrong with me? And your church folks will say, well, you just need to get closer to the Lord. But that's not always the case. That wasn't the case with me. I love God. I love God. And I was determined that I was not going to give up on God. I was determined that I was going to keep searching, because I felt like God was pressing me on to search. Because when I look at my religious text, and it says that Jesus prayed that we would all be one with God like he was one with God. But yet I don't hear any conversation about that. I hear a lot of elevating of Jesus, but I never hear anyone talk about the divinity of man. I don't hear that in my, maybe I'm not in the right churches, but I don't hear that. So these things contribute to the illusion that religion and spirituality are different, that other spiritual practices like meditation are flawed, that things like numerology and astrology are things that we should not engage in. But the reality is, beloved, the very day, the day that you were born, the time that you were born, the position of the stars in the sky on the day you were born, the placement of the moon and the sun on the day you were born, all are indicators of who you are. This is why they can be so accurate. This is why, because you did exist before you were formed in the womb. God did know you because you are an eternal spiritual being, right? So this is why these other things seem so accurate. But here's my concern, and this is why I wanted to really begin to share my truth and my view, because what I'm seeing happening now, because there is a spiritual awakening that's happening, and because people they're not quite sure what's happening. They know that it's not a physical thing. They know it's spiritual. And everybody's very comfortable with the term vibe. You know, people talk about, know your vibe, find your vibe, your high vibe and all that. People talk about that. But the challenge in that is that even just the vibe is not the whole story. People talk about law of attraction. It's true, it works, but it's not the whole story. And so the truth is, I'm going to tell you the truth from my perspective, is that those are tools that give you direction. They're directional, but you determine your path. The danger spot is when we take those tools and we begin to try and use them to direct our lives. Then we allow ourselves potentially to be manipulated because we assume and we externalize our power to the astrologer, or we externalize our power to the numerologist. They're guides and tools. But because religion tends to create a box for us to operate in and says, no, you can't use those tools. Well, now you're at a disadvantage from everyone else who's having a spiritual experience. You who are loving God, the absolute most as far as you know, you that are giving your all in spiritual activities and church activities and believing that you are doing all you can for God, you that feel incomplete even though you're in all that, you that feel out of place in your own church, you don't understand because you're limited and you don't have access to the tools. In my 30 years of being a Christian, I have never once had anyone talk to me about meditation. Yes, in my spiritual text, it talks about meditate on the word day and night, which will help increase your vibration. But I'm talking about understanding more about me and my layers and how to really let them go. Because from a Christian perspective, you say, oh, okay, Jesus came and took that for you, which I'm like, great, shortcut, Cliff Notes, I love it. But you have to receive it and release. And here is where the challenge is that you need tools to help you to release yourself from the different things and experiences that you've had. And those tools typically lie outside of religion. So to answer the question, bridging the gap between spirituality and religion, what shall we do? Well, there is a way. And you do, we're not going to be naive about it. There are good vibrations and there are bad vibrations. There are high frequency activities in beings and there are low frequency activities in beings, okay? So you do need to have an understanding of how to operate in the spiritual environment to keep yourself out of situations you don't want to be in, but you have to go there. Because in and of itself, based on what you know within your spiritual text, you just don't have enough. So this is where you have to choose. If you listen to me this far, you're here because you believe that you're on a path that is taking you somewhere, and you need to make some decisions about what you're going to believe and why you believe what you believe and what you're going to continue to believe and how far you want to take this. And so I have created a safe environment for that. When I was coming up and having my spiritual awakening, I relied on videos and books and tapes. Reverend Ike, yes, Reverend Ike. Victor Odos, my favorite. Aaron Dowdy. These are guys that have come before me who have gone through spiritual awakening, who knew what awakening was about and helped me to find my way when I thought that there was something wrong with me. And there wasn't. I had questions, and religion didn't have answers. There was just kind of that God is mysterious thing. But God is not mysterious. God wants us to have the wisdom and the knowledge of who we are and what we are. But we have to seek it. And so we have to give ourselves permission to think freely. Give yourself permission to not be bound by the boundaries that have been established, but to pursue the truth that you know is true for you. So with that, I hope this is helpful for you. Definitely go ahead and subscribe to this video if you think that I may be able to help you. And I encourage you to really embrace the idea that you are a spirit being. And this world is here for you to experience. Have a great day. And I'll see you soon.